Hello, Alpha Quadrant. Independent Captain Nick Lacarno here with a message for anyone who feels like an afterthought.
Coming up, Nick Lacarno and his mutinous rogue alliance of disgruntled lower deckers move to take on the Federation while using Becket Mariner as a pawn.
Cerritos crew, this is the captain. I am about to disobey a direct order and stage a rescue of Lieutenant Junior Grade Mariner.
Meanwhile, Captain Freeman and the Cerritos crew disobey orders and make a risky deal with the Orions as they mount a rescue mission to save her.
This is it, people. We only get one shot. Are you ready, acting captain?
I've got this.
How will Mariner and the Cerritos crew derail Nick Lacarno's sinister plan?
And can they accomplish this before he unleashes the deadly power of a stolen Genesis device?
All this and more.
Coming up on the Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4 finale edition of Energize.
Energize.
We're hilariously going into the uncharted regions of the Star Trek universe.
You're listening to Energize, a Star Trek Lower Decks edition podcast. Your source for comedic analysis, colorful debate, and fun discussions about the adventures of Becket Mariner and the USS Cerritos Lower Decks crew.
I'm your host, Anthony McLemore.
And I'm Steve Truitt.
This week, the crew of the Cerritos are hot on the heels of the maniacal Nick Lacarno as he seeks to destroy the very Federation he once served.
Surprising twists and turns and an homage to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, infused this week's episode with a huge dose of awesomeness.
Here's a warp speed recap of the Season 4 finale of Star Trek Lower Decks, No Small Parts.
We now have indisputable evidence that Nicholas Lacarno has been behind all the attacks on non-Federation ships.
And now he's taken one of my officers.
Nick, am I a prisoner here?
I can't tell you how much of a game changer it is to have a Starfleet officer join our cause. Imagine the looks on their faces when Command finds out an Admiral's daughter defected. I have an officer here who knows how to speak truth to power. Becket, care to tell them what Starfleet's really like?
Oh, hey, this guy sucks!
What?
He's an idiot and his plan is stupid. He's gonna get you all killed because he only cares about himself.
Somebody stop her! End that transmission!
Something just appeared outside the system. It's an Orion destroyer, and it's massive.
This is it, people. We only get one shot. Are you ready, acting captain?
I've got this.
All right, Steve, last week we got the long-awaited answers as to the origins of the mysterious ship and who's behind it. Disgraced Starfleet Academy cadet Nick Lacarno and a band of disgruntled Lower Decks crew members from various non-Federation ships.
Right, and we knew it last week. We knew that it was Nick, but we weren't sure why. So this week we definitely find out what his master plan is and what's going to happen to Mariner, because when last we left them, she was basically kidnapped by him and kind of woke up on his ship, but we figure out what his scheme is through her.
Yeah, and clearly he has, plans for her and is banking on her for some reason. So we're going to find out the reason why he feels that way.
I don't know, Nick. The Starburst maneuver's banned for a reason. We'd be flying too close.
Yeah, it's dangerous as hell for anyone other than Nova Squadron. We're the best pilots the Academy's seen in years. Pulling it off would make us legends.
So we start with a flashback to Starfleet Academy 13 years ago, and Nick Lacarno is trying to convince Wesley Crusher, who was a guest star on this episode,
Right.
And,
That's right.
and fellow cadets to do the banned Starburst maneuver that ended up costing another cadet his life.
So I'm going to start with the first Easter egg that I noticed. We open on Starfleet Academy. We know it's Academy because the buildings look very familiar and we can see the bridge in the background. And we zoom out and I see my first Easter egg. Did you notice who was in the shot when they zoomed out wide?
No.
On his knees, getting up after trimming the bushes, was Boothby.
You know what?
You
got me.
Do you remember Boothby?
I do not.
Okay, so in an episode where Picard gets injured by the Nausicaans. He gets stabbed through the heart. Or he gets shot in the heart. They go back in time, and Q takes him back to his academy days when he's a cadet, and he gets stabbed through the heart by a Nausicaan. Well, the whole time, he's got this curator, someone who's doing all the bushes, named Boothby, played by, I can't remember his name, but he was in The Courtship of Eddie's. He was My Favorite Martian. So I can't remember his name, but he's a great actor. Ray something. So a couple times we've seen Boothby when Picard goes back to the academy. So as we zoom out, we see, and you can tell it's him because he's wearing these overalls and this huge hat. So I just wanted to say that. That was I got so excited when I saw that.
Oh, yeah, and the good thing is that Star Trek Lower Decks has always been good about planting Easter eggs. That's the brilliance of this show, and, we continue to enjoy those things, and there are things that I noticed later on.
If we're going to pull this off, we need to log way more hours in the simulator.
Pull what off?
A surprise for the commencement. Don't worry about it.
So Nick Lacarno is standing there with the cadets that were involved in the banned Starburst maneuver, and a young first-year cadet, Becket Mariner, walks up to the group, and she's all wide-eyed and eager, which was very refreshing.
What kind of surprise?
Supposedly something that will make us all legends.
It was great to see the team there, especially the fourth member of that team, because he was talked about during the first duty episode, but we never saw him, that cadet that got killed.
Right. And so Mariner is inquiring about what they're planning to do, but it's a secret within the group.
Yeah. It was funny to hear Wesley Crusher's voice. You could hear that he was trying to force his voice a little higher to sound younger.
Yes.
I didn't recognize Robert Duncan McNeil's voice either at all. His seemed much gruffer, even when he was trying to sound younger. It was funny.
Nick, am I a prisoner here?
What? No. I saved you from those Romulans and Klingons. Beamed you right up here to the Nova 1.
I didn't need saving.
So we jump back to the present, and Mariner wants to know if she's a prisoner of Nick's, and Nick says he brought her there because she's exactly who he needs right now. And remember, Freeman was very, very apprehensive when they were assigned to go, when Nick Lacarno was brought up, because they're just like, she thinks that Nick would inspire something rogue that's already, she's rogue all the time, would inspire her to be even more rogue.
And this is the brilliance of the entire season, because Beckett's been all around the galaxy causing trouble. There was a time 2 seasons ago where she took off with that curator or that archaeologist, whatever, space archaeologist, and she left for a while, and she got trouble on Ferengar and Ferenginar rather, and all these things. She's built quite a reputation for herself, and of course, Freeman's going to be scared of this. So it's a great setup. I love that.
Oh, yeah. And so, but Mariner's like, wait a minute, dude, I barely knew you guys. Nick's like, well, I consider you a junior member of Nova Squad. And so Nick clearly is into Mariner for some odd reason.
I can't tell you how much of a game changer it is to have a Starfleet officer join our cause. Imagine the looks on their faces when Command finds out an Admiral's daughter defected.
It feels like he's manipulating her too. Like, I don't think he would have remembered her, but I think he just seems like the kind of guy that, could talk his way into anything. So it seems to me like he's trying to manipulate her. Like, oh, sure, you were the best, just shining her on. She's too smart for that, I think.
Yeah. And so Nick reveals to Mariner the fleet that he's amassed of the ships that he's commandeered. So I was like, okay, so now we see he built the fleet. Well, stole
so
the
that's
fleet.
where he did those ships. But this is what confuses me, is that if he shined that bright light and it looked like everybody was destroyed and all of the debris was left over, well, what was the debris if he collected all those ships? That's what confuses me, I guess.
I don't know. Maybe that was all part of his plan. Maybe he left crap behind.
Like fake debris? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So Nick gives Mariner a tour of the ship. Nick is particularly excited to have a Starfleet officer on board. Bells and whistles, the warning signs here. Yeah. Having an admiral's daughter on board would stick at the Starfleet. And this is all presuming that Mariner's on board with this. What could this mean?
Well, he thinks she's going to, right? So it's like, look, your mom has never taken you seriously. You've always been a lower decker. He doesn't realize that she, one, likes to be a lower decker, was afraid to become someone more than that. But in all of her rogueness over the last 4 seasons, she's always had a good heart. She's always cared about her friends and always kind of comes back to Starfleet. And he doesn't know that about her. He just knows her bad reputation. And I think that's what makes him think stupidly that she'll just go along.
Yep. But Mariner plays along and asks, how are they going to stick it to Starfleet? And, Nick doesn't reveal and says everyone's going to find out.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I'm just like, oh, crap, what is he? Clearly he's going to parade her around, but, I'm not sure at this point, exactly how he's going to use Mariner.
Well, I think for sure we knew he wasn't going to use her for ransom. I think because I think he really does see something in her that he can use, not to hold her for ransom, rather, but actually she's going to join us because he's gotten everyone else to join him.
Exactly.
Captain Freeman, due to your reports, we now have indisputable evidence that Nicholas Lacarno has been behind all the attacks on non-Federation ships.
And now he's taken one of my officers.
So, aboard the Cerritos, Freeman is speaking with Starfleet brass, including Mariner's father, who's an admiral, and she's ready to get busy locating Nick, of course, because her daughter is captive. And it becomes political really quickly.
Well, because, everybody at Starfleet is worried that any mistakes that they make could just be catastrophic, right? They can't afford to make big, bold moves. It's going to look bad. They've been trying to keep the peace. It's in a way, I think, a smart political move. They have to think that way.
Yeah, at first I had a knee-jerk reaction like, oh, are you kidding me? But then I took a second to take a breath, and I understood what was going on. And the deal is that these are all non-Federation, ships that have been commandeered. And if anything goes wrong, say someone gets killed in the process, well, now you've killed, crew members from a non-Federation planet, even though, we'll find, these people have gone rogue. Yeah. It's still their people, and they could take offense to that.
And no war has been declared yet.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, ships have been missing, and I guess they did. Well, I guess they did try to commandeer Riker and 7 of 9 and all those folks.
It makes sense now because 7 of 9 was coloring outside the lines around this
Thomas
time.
Riker, kind of a fringe
Thomas
guy.
Riker. Yep, and Beverly Crusher.
Right, trust no one.
She's been MIA.
Yeah, that's right. See, they know what they're doing.
So,
but still, Freeman's ordered to stand down.
You know what they're doing.
Right?
It's a good tip of the
She's
hat.
ordered to stand down, and she's going to, she tells them she's going to do that, but that's not what happens. The first admiral's like, I'm out, that's it. And he just leaves her with that edict. You cannot get involved, period.
Captain, we're picking up a transmission. It's going out on all channels.
On screen. Mariner!
Hello, Alpha Quadrant. Independent Captain Nick Lacarno here with a message for anyone who feels like an afterthought.
So Nick sends a quadrant-wide message. God, can't roll that off the tongue. Appealing to anyone who feels like they've been an afterthought. So now it's shaping up, at least in my mind, as to what's going on. I figured out that, and you've said this yourself, Nick has to be bitter about it. About being kicked out of Starfleet.
For sure, and he got kicked out in an embarrassing way. And this is what an interesting character he is. So non-Starfleet because one, he doesn't accept responsibility for the death of his friend. He never did. He tried to cover it up. He tried to blame other people. And here we are 13 years later, and he's still that bitter guy that will not accept accountability. What an interesting character to be introduced into Star Trek as a partial member of Starfleet. We haven't seen this before. I don't know, man. Sometimes I wonder if they're mirroring our own politics. Like, wow, really? They're making you guys now? That kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think it makes it relatable and
it does. That's the whole point. It's just so interesting that it's really mirroring a lot of what we're seeing. No accountability, keep going, don't quit, that kind of crap.
It looks like Tom Paris. I don't see it.
They have, the same face. They're identical.
No, I just don't see it.
And so there's a funny moment. So while Nick is going on his diatribe, Rutherford whispers to Boimler on the bridge. He's like, wow, you bear the striking resemblance to Tom Paris. But Boimler's like, nah, I don't see it.
He says it twice, right? No, he looks exactly like Tom Paris. And then immediately Boimler's like, don't see it. And the reason that joke works is because Boimler's so obsessed with Tom Paris that he wouldn't see it, would he? Because he idolizes a Tom Paris But it's a great. I'm glad they said that. Yeah,
totally. And it's an inside joke for all those people who were in the know. And you brought it up last week that Tom Paris, the actor who played Tom Paris, also played Nick Lacarno.
Yeah. What else is great too is Nick doesn't give up. He's appealing to all of those lower decker crews that have been disaffected, and he's just saying, just join the independent fleet. And I'm starting to wonder, is this going to work? Because he's like warning that if anyone tries to stop him, he's gotten this black market Genesis device and he's threatening to use it. And suddenly I'm thinking, well, wait a second. You're trying to inspire people, and now you're threatening people. This guy's got a screw loose. I don't think he knows what he's doing.
I know, but he's going hard in on, disaffected folks.
Hard in.
And that strikes a chord. And I think, like you said before, I think it's mirroring our current situation in politics. You have somebody who doesn't respect the rules, and but he strikes a chord because there are a lot of people who are disaffected. But the very, very people who are disaffected don't necessarily understand how the bigger picture and how things are work in the first place. They're operating purely off of their emotions of the moment.
I have an officer here who knows how to speak truth to power. Becket, care to tell them what Starfleet's really like?
Oh, hey. What up, everyone?
At that moment, he turns to Mariner and goes, look what I've got here. She's on board. She's the daughter of an admiral. Mariner, say something. And she's like, nope.
At that point, her eyes get big. And he's like, I want you to speak truth to power. And it was just like, oh, crap. So what is she going to do?
Yeah.
This guy sucks.
What?
He's an idiot and his plan is stupid. He's going to get you all killed because he only cares about himself.
Somebody stop her! End that transmission!
Yep, she's like, I'm out of here. She grabs the Genesis device, kicks Lacarno and jumps out the door, and the chase is on. And what I loved about that is, Freeman is just so proud. She's like, that's my girl. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I love the doctor. The doctor was like, yeah, let's fuck shit up, Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was amazing. So
it was just awesome. It's just getting so much fun.
Oh, yeah, very much so. And so, Freeman basically, is going to disobey orders, and the whole crew agrees, and they're going to stage a rescue mission for Mariner. And again, like I was saying, the doctor's like, let's fuck some shit up. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And so Mariner's on the run throughout the ship, and she commandeers an old Federation ship using her mom's authorization codes.
Computer, command code override 06107.2.
Welcome, Captain Carol Freeman.
Yes, knew that would come in handy.
I love it because it's a ship. It's one of the few used ships. It's a variation on what's called the is it the Akira class, I think. I'm a big fan of all the ships. I always, I get on Instagram and I look at all the ships. And this is kind of a variation on the Akira class. I love it. It's just the dish, and then you've got these wings coming off the back of it, and it's really cool looking. Yeah, thank you. In fact, I think the Beverly Crusher ship was an Akira class ship also. Nerd.
I had to do it. Yeah, we're both nerds, but nerd calling a nerd is like chicken on chicken.
That's right. So somehow she's able to commandeer that ship using her authorization codes.
Yep, and so Lacarno's fleet goes after her, and she's flying through, and she can't get around the shield that's protecting the area where they're held up, and Nick is unsuccessfully trying to appeal to her, and vice versa. They're both trying to get in each other's heads and appeal to. She's trying to appeal to his, sense of decency, while he's trying to appeal to her sense of independence and disregard for the rules.
It doesn't work, so she's got to hide. So the first thing she does is go to these rings of a nearby planet, and they're all just ice crystals, and they're just smashing into each other. It's very perilous, and I just love watching that. I love it when those kinds of things happen.
So Freeman's in a predicament. Yeah, she's been ordered to stand down. So what are they going to do? So the challenge is they got to get through these shields that are around Lacarno's fleet. But Tendi has a plan.
All departments checking in. Everyone wants to help.
Thank you. Now, we just have to figure out how the hell we're getting past that damn shield.
I think I can help with that.
So next thing we see is they're on Orion, on the Orion homeworld, and Tendi is appealing to her sister, who is now in charge since Tendi abdicated her throne.
How dare you, sister?
bringing these Starfleet outsiders here, shaming our house?
Miss Tendi, if you'll only let me explain.
Stand down, Captain. You have no authority here.
Yeah, I love this. And when she said, I've got a plan, I wasn't sure what it was going to be, but I love that we keep going back to Orion. I love that we keep seeing her story and her backstory. She's a queen. She abdicated, but she's still got power there. And she's just trying to appeal to her sister. Hey, listen, if you hate the Federation so much, why don't you make them look bad by giving us a ship and we'll take care of business and you can be the hero. She's like, yeah.
I love that the Orion way is a bunch of power moves and chess moves and deals and bartering and all kinds of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And pirating on the side, of course.
The rules of barter by combat are simple. Each side selects a warrior. If yours defeats mine, I'll lend you a battleship. But if you lose, your captain will surrender the Cerritos to me.
So, Tendi then yells out, badass Tendi demands barter by combat. And I'm like, what?
I was like, okay, great. So now and this is very Game of Thrones, right? Trial by combat. And they've got to pick who's going to be the representative. So the sister picks this gigantic woman, who reminds me a little of Brienne of Tarth, for all of our Game of Thrones fans out there. And someone mentions she's like 2.5 shacks.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah. And then, but Tendi has to pick.
Yeah, and Tendi picks Dr. McLemore.
She's going to kill him.
Dr. McLemore, fluff your down. Fluff your down.
It's embarrassing.
Just fluff it.
I have to tell you, I knew that was coming, and only because they had everyone lined up, and he's just sitting there eating out of a bag of popcorn or something, and I'm like, oh, they're going to pick him, right? He was thinking, oh, I'm fine, I'm not going to get picked. It was great.
And so I'm like, okay, Tendi, Tendi's smart and she's cunning, and I'm just like, okay, so there's got to be something to this. I'm just sitting there with bated breath, ready to see how this plays out. And so the big Orion woman is kicking McLemore's ass. And Tendi tells him tells the doctor to fluff his down.
Yeah, and now we know why she picked him. She's just super, super smart.
Yep.
And he does, and she just starts sneezing.
He puffs up, and all these particles, fly through the air, and it makes the opponent, it excites her allergies. And Tendi knew that she had allergies.
Well, and then she passes out.
Yep.
Well, then she passes out, and I'm thinking, great. We win, but no, because the big one falls on McLemore.
Thus.
And he can't get out from under.
So he loses.
Captain Freeman, a pleasure to speak again so soon.
This warship is totally inoperable. You said you were going to help us.
I said I would lend you the retribution. We never discussed its condition.
So the whole deal in the first place was to trade pink slips, right? If we win, we get a destroyer. If you win, you can have the Cerritos. Well, we lost. Freeman's doing the right thing and saying, okay, you can have the Cerritos. And Tendi's like, no, wait, hang on. Take me instead. You've always wanted me to be here by your side. I'll do that if you give my friends a destroyer. So the sister agrees. And I'm thinking, oh, well, does that mean Tendi stays? It's like, no, you're allowed to go with her, but you have to come back on your honor. And I'm thinking, well, what if she dies? But she's like, okay, great, I'll take that deal. And they're like, okay, go get the destroyer. And they get to it. And it's not exactly what they thought it was.
Yeah, it's an inoperable warship. It's basically a mothball ship.
But it's big. They're like, oh my God, it's huge. So they get into the ship and just about everything's not working. And Rutherford is like, we're talking with Billups, and of course, what's his name? Livick, right? Livick.
Yep.
He's there, and he's like, we should turn on this system. And Rutherford's like, no, we need to turn on this system. And so suddenly there's this fight about what needs to be turned on and what shouldn't be, to save power. And T'Lyn, who's always smart, has a great idea to settle the dispute. And we switch right to Mark Twain diplomacy.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my gosh, here we go again. But I actually think it's funny now.
Well, yeah, it's a running joke. And it's like, there they are back on that ship. Who knew there was a holodeck? Who knew where they were going to get their costumes? But somehow they did. And they work it out. And T'Lyn's like, sometimes illogical tactics deliver an illogical solution, but sometimes they deliver a logical solution. So they did that.
Damn, warp drive's out. Life support's damaged. I hate to say it, but I think I gotta set you off somewhere before anyone catches up.
So back with Mariner, Mariner decides to plot a course for a lifeless planet, and she's going to set off the Genesis device before Lacarno can use it, nefariously. And so Mariner gets attacked by a Romulan, the Romulan traders on their ship, and she gets cornered by Lacarno's fleet. And she takes off and flies into the nebula, and here we go.
Dude, this is where I'm just like freaking out. Wrath of Khan. We all know the movie. It's still my favorite Star Trek movie.
Me too.
And that James, as soon as you hear that James Horner music, and it's subtle at first. It's that, that wonderful score that he did for that. That music made that whole scene in the whole nebula, and every bit of it is wonderful. And they're stealing every shot from Wrath of Khan.
Yeah,
Everything.
I thought it was brilliant because it's always refreshing. That's what makes the show more than just some silly cartoon. I mean, it's always an homage to Star Trek canon and all all these Easter eggs they plant. So I was from then on I was just like even more into it.
What are you doing? That storm will rip you apart! Damn it!
What are you worried about? We're fine. She won't last 10 minutes in there.
Then we'll lose our bargaining power!
But, Nick is sitting there and he's ordering everyone into the nebula, and an argument ensues amongst all of his disaffected lower deckers because they're all equals. You can't tell me what to do. You can't do this. And I'm just like, okay, this is the reason why you rejects don't work in the first place, because you have to have a hierarchy or it doesn't work.
Right, and you have to work together in your position, right? And so they're trying to be kind of, I don't want to use the wrong word here, but like communists, where it's like we all work for the same goal. But it's like, no, they didn't realize this. They're working for Nick Lacarno the whole time, who happens to be crazy, and they're all drinking the Kool-Aid, right? He manipulated them. It is very real world, very current, if you think about it.
You got to have, there has to be a hierarchy. There has to be centralized leadership. Yeah. You can still run it where everybody feels a part of, and it's more committee-like. But at the end, you still have, the leadership has to make a decision. Somebody has to do it. So Nick flies into the nebula himself and, overcomes. They're both trying to appeal to each other. He's like, I chose you because I read your file and you're supposed to be rogue. But, Mariner, like you said earlier, believes in Starfleet's mission, even though that sometimes, Starfleet makes mistakes. Yeah.
And they're doing this while they're showing those Wrath of Khan shots where, Mariner has taken her ship at Z- 1,000 meters, and now she's above the other ship or down below the ship, and it's taking the exact same turns, exact same music. It was just masterful. The way they must have done it shot by shot. It was just so fun to watch, and it was just so awesome.
Yeah, and Mariner makes a good point. Not once did she fire on his fleet, but he tried to put them in danger.
And they're listening to that. They can hear that. She also points out that his fellow cadet got killed years ago because of Nick's ego, right? She finally puts the mirror to his face, and of course he flips out.
Oh yeah, he flips out. He's done. And so then we cut and we see the Orion ship appears near the border, and Boimler's at the helm of the Cerritos.
Something just appeared outside the system. It's an Orion destroyer, and it's massive.
This is it, people. We only get one shot. Are you ready, acting captain?
I've got this.
It's so great. Captain Boimler. And we don't see this at first because we're like, okay, well, wait, where's Freeman and everybody else? It's just Boimler's in charge, and he's getting the pep talk from behind, like, you can do this and let's do it. And he's there, and he's just like, okay, let's ram this thing. And we zoom out, and we see that the Cerritos is towing that giant ship, and I thought that was exciting too.
Oh yeah, I was like, this is some kind of slingshot maneuver. Hello, Picard.
Right, which we saw in Picard.
Yep. And so
that destroyer gets hurled right at the shield, and it totally crashes right through it. At least for a minute, it creates a hole.
Yep, and then Freeman aboard the captain's boat with Shax and Ransom shoot through the breach.
Yeah, it's technically the captain's yacht.
Yes.
And the other thing I love about that is someone says, oh, I've never seen the captain's yacht used before. And that's another inside joke, because the original captain's yacht was designed into the Enterprise D, and then they built one in the Enterprise E, which they used in Nemesis.
Right.
but it's almost never been used before. So to see the captain's yacht, that was exciting.
Yep. And so Lacarno's coalition bails on him, and meanwhile Nick cripples Mariner's ship, and so Mariner decides, well, I'm just going to go ahead and activate this Genesis device. Just as Nick beams aboard.
Right, he beams aboard, and she's like, "It's too late. You can't stop it." A la, Wrath of Khan. Kirk turns to his son David. Can we stop it? And he's no, we can't.
Yep. And so they're fighting. They're fighting and going back and forth. And Nick is just about to shoot her when she beams out.
Yep. Well, he does shoot at her, and she beams out just in time. And of course, we see Lacarno acting a lot like Khan, who was also, by the way, a reject of Earth. He got rejected, thrown into exile, so to speak, and he's pissed about it. Narcissist, yeah. So the one other little cute thing is when Mariner turns it on. It's the same little silver circles that Khan used to turn it on. Everything about it was exact, and the smoke coming down from the bottom, and it was all just like a little Genesis device. It was just fucking great. I loved it.
Next time, set a shorter timer.
To deactivate detonation, please insert 2 bars of platinum.
They put a paywall on a bomb? Stupid Ferengi.
And he's working, he's right there, and it's going to be deactivated, and he's smarter than everybody. And that's when it asks for the 2 bars of platinum, because, of course, it was taken over by the Ferengi. And he's just like, dang you, I hate the Ferengi. And that's the last thing that he says.
Yep. And so Nick is destroyed as the Cerritos takes off. And, I was just like, okay, and they did it just like in Wrath of Khan. The ship takes off just as it explodes.
With the growing wave.
Yep. And so, and the beauty of it. Yeah, so I thought that was like great, nice tip of the hat to Wrath of Khan. And so the Admiral admonishes Freeman, but doesn't charge her because diplomatic channels have now been opened with the Orions.
For the first time, which is exciting. Now, I guarantee you that's going to be the bulk of season 5, is just all the trouble they get into with the Orions, because that's going to open a whole kettle of fish.
Oh, I'm sure of it. It's destiny, in the words of Darth Vader. Yeah. Okay, I know I did the cardinal sin there.
What I love too about the explosion is, of course, a planet is created, which never made sense even in Wrath of Khan, because it killed lifeless planets, but it never created a planet. But anyway, so the new planet, of course, is called Lacarno, and they say something interesting, which I think is a future tip, saying, his atoms were scattered throughout, and that's why they named it. We may revisit this planet someday, I think. It's quite possible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. Search for Spock, search for Lacarno. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
They leave the door open. Always leave the door open for something, for mayhem later on. Yep. So the Admiral says there's one piece of business left. And I'm just like, okay, well, Mariner did a great job. Was she going to get a promotion? It kind of led me in that direction.
Mariner! Hey, easy. I didn't survive a Genesis explosion just so I could get hugged to death.
We're just really happy you're back.
Thanks, Boims. I feel like I really am back for the first time in a while.
But they meet, and she's just back to herself, and they all recognize this, and she apologizes for her behavior, and it just seems like she's back, not back to where she was, but just a better version of who she could have always been in the first place. And I think that's a result of, Nick Lacarno. She could have totally been that. She could have been an angry Nick Lacarno, and she never was.
Lieutenant, you've been requested to return to Orion. Your sister sent a ship.
Already?
Derica doesn't waste any time.
So while they're kind of celebrating and getting excited, T'Lyn gets a message from her former captain, but she ignores it. It looked like a cell phone, like ignore. And she's like, I'm going to stay with you guys and be Tindy's bestie, which I thought was adorable.
Yeah, and of course, Tindy's been looking for, a bestie in her area of expertise since Peanut Hamper. So here you go.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah. And they'll be great stories. And I think T'Lyn's a great addition to that cast.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So we end with the fact that the Orions, Freeman shows up and tells Tindy she has to leave as part of the deal. But everybody feels like Tendi will be back.
She will, but it could be from the Orion side. I think next season we're going to see some Orion stuff and the tug of war with Tendi. I think that'll be great. The last shot is her, with sad eyes, breathing in, and then suddenly they just become, Orion eyes. And it's like, wow, she just went right back into that. I thought that was great last shot.
Oh, yeah. So I'm really, really eager. But, man, this has been a fantastic season of Star Trek Lower Decks.
Incredible
I
season.
really, really enjoyed it. I've appreciated the evolution of all the characters, and especially like Beckett's, journey. But, like you said before, everybody, got a piece of this evolutionary action.
I think the only change in this season I would have made is they really saved the story of Lacarno for the last 2. Everything else was 8 episodes of teasing it. And the episodes were all fun and great, but I think they could have layered more in. I know it would have become episodic at that point. I know it would have become an arc instead of episodic, but still, I would have liked a little bit more of the story instead of making us guess until the last 2 episodes. But still, just a phenomenal way to end the season. I just can't wait for season 5.
Oh, yeah. Well, we will see. Well, I think they're running strong. They're running on all cylinders, and bravo to the writers and the actors. Fantastic. Just fantastic.
So what's next for us? We're going to do Discovery, season 5?
Yep, the series finale season of Discovery, and I've seen the teasers. I think that they're going to make up for past transgression, so I'm actually looking forward to it.
I really hope so.
Oh, they can't go out with a whimper.
No, or just bad writing, because I think, season 3 and 4 just were not good.
Yeah.
And if they're going to send us 3,000, or excuse me, is it 1,000 years into the future?
Oh, I can't remember.
And not have, well, it's 1,000 years, but it's like the technology has barely changed, but they never explain that. I think they were very weak with Discovery, and they focused on the wrong things. And so I'm hoping, I'm very hopeful, but don't be surprised if I'm bitter during the Discovery season.
I'm hopeful. I'm going to be optimistic. I think they're going to pull it off, and we will see.
I know, you always are. You're a delightful person.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for continuing to listen to Energize. Steve and I really, really appreciate it, and we're just going to keep this thing going.
And if you want to know more about us, you can go to www.energizepodcasts.com. You can check out Anthony's site at anthonymclemore.com or my site, stevetruitt.com.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Anthony McLemore.
I'm Steve Truitt. Live long and prosper.